Okay, hello everyone, I'm Gwen. I'm not particularly representing any company today. I'm just kind of talking about my experience of working in IT and testing for quite a long time. Not quite back to the 15th century, but back far enough. I started as a developer back in working on Y2K, moved into production support, environment support, eventually found testing and discovered the love of my life. And I've been working in testing for probably about 15 years now. And I'm just going to kind of go through things that I've seen change, things that I think are still the same, stuff that I think is a good way of working. I don't have 20 minutes worth of stuff to talk about, and I'm really hoping that this is kind of an interactive session, so ask questions as we go. I'm kind of really happy to discuss things on the slide. Otherwise, you can ask questions at the end. Otherwise, everybody gets to have a drink earlier. And I kind of started working on this on Friday because I accepted this kind of opportunity to speak, which I'm actually really pleased to have got last week. So there aren't going to be kind of so many nice pictures as there were in Rupan's slides. Hopefully that will be fine. So what have I seen change in my time in testing? So I've seen people move from manual execution into automated execution, which I think is one of the most valuable changes that's happened for two reasons. So one is just cost and speed of turnaround, and the other is removal of weird bugs. Catching those weird bugs really early. So people are really bad at doing repetitive things over and over again. Machines are really good at doing repetitive things over and over again. So that kind of addition of automation into the tool set that QAs have, I think is a really valuable thing. I've seen people move from waterfall to agile. My personal experience of that was a little bit bumpy. I found that really hard. I've been working with waterfall for quite a while. My first agile project, I got it horribly wrong. I had no idea what people expected me to do. I was a lead rather than a manager, and getting my head around the difference of leading people who are embedded in agile crews versus managing people who were working in a department was a really difficult thing, and I think it probably took me about a year to kind of wrap my head around what I needed to do in this new place. I think I've seen QA testing, any kind of testing, whether automated writing code or manual, move from something that was very black box. So you would make a start and you would have some requirements and you'd create some test cases, and then the system would do something and then you check it at the end, into so many tools that allow you to look into what's happening step by step and really dig into the processes. And again, I think that's an amazing kind of step through. I started on the mainframe. Moving into web apps was again kind of quite an interesting, challenging thing. And then another kind of step through, which was a bumpy one, was moving from mainframe deployments. You'd do it on a Sunday. Everybody would come in, nothing would be working. So you'd be fine to do stuff because there's no people expecting to do things, to working on out of rotation boxes, deployments and checking things, and then moving into CD. That journey and that kind of change in what you need to do, both personally as a QA and if you're leading people in QA, was really kind of a challenge and an interesting thing to go through, because that kind of felt like quite an existential challenge to why we're here. We're here to make sure that things are right before things go live, the box is taken out of rotation, someone logs onto it and goes, yes, everything's good. And suddenly that's all gone because things are deploying all the time. It was a big change to step through. And then I think the final thing is actually people moving from reactive testing into more proactive quality assurance. So I think Rupan picked up on this one as well. The the expectations now are much more around building in testability and supporting that fast deployment rather than kind of checking that something's right at the end. Going to pause. Any questions? Anyone want to do the interaction? Yes, excellent.
How do you think Agile has benefited businesses?
So I think there's kind of pluses and minuses. So the things that I see benefit are actually it does speed things up. Compared to kind of projects that I worked on that would be 6 months and then you weren't sure whether it was going to be the right thing, I'd say Agile definitely makes it more likely that what you deliver after that period of time is going to be what somebody wants. I think what you lose a little bit is kind of the planning vision and the big picture. So Agile quite rightly kind of pulls people into quite a tightly knit team, quite focused, quite pitched on the short term. And I think there's a risk there that you lose that bigger picture long term. Where are we actually going? But yeah, for me, it just things get delivered faster.
Do you say it's better than waterfall?
I'd say it's different. I had some classic waterfall. I'd say yes, it's definitely better. If you actually kind of ever manage to do a V model thing, I'd say it depends on the context. So there's some domains and some organizations where that's going to work better. There's a lot of organizations where Agile is just automatically going to give you benefit, I think.
Yeah, so you mentioned you worked on the Y2K.
Yeah.
Do you think like, in terms of like really critical software, life dependent, Agile is suitable?
I think it depends how you run it and how you have that, how you make sure you have that big picture view. I think if you have that scenario where small Agile teams are working on very siloized pieces of a product and the architecture is not well defined, then that's going to be quite risky. I think if you have a strong architecture and a strong culture around making sure you're thinking long term, then yeah, there's no reason why it shouldn't work.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Do you think that Agile that you've come across is done the right way? Because sometimes like people really believe they do Agile, they don't. And I think this is where like some of the problems are coming from.
Yeah, I think it's probably very rare that people do Agile the way that some purist Agile coaches would say Agile should be done. I have worked in many different flavors of Agile. I wouldn't say any one of them was better than the others. I think I'd come back to actually the Agile Manifesto, which is people and communication over process, and that kind of tightening of this is the process and this is how you have to do Agile, I think actually removes a chunk of the value of Agile. It's definitely a thing that organizations have difficulty with, that kind of self-organization, and working from retrospectives and improving things means that if you've got lots of teams, they all diverge really quickly in different directions because they're all optimizing for what works for them locally. And that I see companies have a lot of difficulty with, which I think is actually Agile's working as it's designed, but it doesn't necessarily fit nicely with finance.
Because you mentioned something that in a waterfall you've got like an overview of the grand plan. Mm-hmm. In Agile you don't, but that, in my opinion, is not true. I mean, even though you're doing an Agile, you can still have like a end goal.
Yeah.
This doesn't mean that you're losing like focus on the big picture.
Yeah.
It's like it's how you get there. You can get by different means.
Yeah, I would agree, definitely. Okay. So things that are still the same. So manual is not quite right here. It's kind of cranial, maybe. All of the test analysis and the test design is still done by people. AI may change that, but wait and see, I think. There's still bugs, but they're not in the places that they used to be. They're kind of around the edges and in that big picture view and the interconnectedness. I'll try that word again. Interconnectedness of what people are working on. Personally, I still find kind of like old school test techniques really, really useful, just as a kind of a mental check of I've understood this requirement and I'm going to test it properly.
The old school pre-automation.
I mean, kind of like stuff that's in the kind of original books and the British standards and that kind of thing. I think as an aid to what you would automate, I think they're really useful. Soft skills, obviously everybody talks about soft skills are as important as technical skills. I think for testing, particularly because you tend to have an agile crew where there'll be maybe one or two testers and there's lots of devs and there's a few other people. I think the more you can represent a quality point of view and the more you can help people to deliver quality early rather than find out about bugs late, the more effective you are. Domain and technical knowledge are always going to be there. Test is dead many times. I think that goes around the loop. And I'm kind of like, if it was dead, you know, we've had 60 years for it to die. It's not dead yet. It just evolves. And the old cliche of the only thing you can rely on is change. I'm going to pause there. Excellent. Thank you.
Using all techniques for like sanity check.
Yeah.
Can you share like more valuable ones with us?
So I think so I have a little thing that I run through, which is kind of like if you were going to test a login field and then go against each of the test techniques. So if you use state transition, you can use that against a login field to go, yep, I've checked all of the things that can happen here after a login. So someone is unlogged in, they can be logged in, they can be unauthenticated because their session's expired, that kind of thing. Or you can use the kind of modified decision coverage where you need to check ands and ors in different ways for trues and false for different things. And actually some of those you can lift and shift directly into an example table in Cucumber, for example, and get something actually quite powerful, which takes a nice BDD statement and then has a kind of really data-grounded example table that I think gives you something quite powerful. Things that I got wrong. So many times I would, less so now, I feel like I've grown and accepted my limitations more. But many times I would kind of go somewhere, particularly a new company, and I think I know what we should be doing. And then I'd discover that I knew nothing at all and that I should be listening to the people around me. I've missed some tech opportunities, I think. So, times to get more hands-on with some of the tech. This would be a different talk if I'd done that, obviously. And I'm catching up now, but it does feel like I'm kind of catching up, like I missed a little bit of some of the tech things there that would have been useful.
What sort of stuff?
So I started a developer in a mainframe, and then I moved into roles that were quite management-y, which meant that when web apps web development started to become popular within businesses, so kind of like Java, Spring Hibernate type thing, I was managing people and not working on things. And as I've kind of gone through my career, so now I'm kind of like actually web apps, I'm closer to it again, but I feel like I missed a chunk there, and I'm never sure whether I would have got more out of what I'm doing if I'd kind of taken those opportunities as they came up.
You can still learn it, because
Yeah.
in my paternity leave,
Yeah.
I took my time to learn some languages, like the latest languages, some Spring, I don't know, Start, Postman, all that kind of stuff. Just, it's like quite refreshing actually.
Yeah.
It's different part of the brain, and languages evolve as well, and it's impossible to keep up with all the languages.
Yeah. So I have been doing, so I've been kind of learning more stuff recently, because it's interesting and it's fun, but I feel like I kind of lost that for a bit. I've worked for some very big American companies. Occasionally I drank the Kool-Aid and believed what they were saying and what they say to other people. Actually, most of it is kind of not really true on the ground, and kind of will be the thing that gets me on a soapbox when, you know, people go, oh, the Amazon pipeline deploys in X seconds, and I'm like, it doesn't. And I think the last two here is kind of that I've had the number of times when I haven't listened to my gut. You know, we're deploying something, and I know as someone starts to deploy that actually this is not going to be successful. There's a bug in there. We've kind of seen it in testing, but we're going to see it suddenly when it hits production much more, and we're going to need to roll back. Or we've been having a conversation before the release, and I've said, I think this is a bug, and someone said, no user would ever do that, and I've gone, all right then, and actually that's kind of the wrong decision. It's always a fine line, because, you know, stuff needs to go out, but actually making sure that you feel like you can go home and look yourself in the mirror after you've done one of those is always an interesting one.
Isn't the focus now more than such an issue that goes into production? It's a matter of how quickly you can fix it once it's there. Continuous pipeline.
So I think if you can roll it back really quickly, then you take the pressure off a lot of something going wrong.
Fix forward, not roll back.
I would say if you're affecting a live experience, you should roll it back and then fix it and then roll it out again, rather than leave users with a broken experience while you work out what's wrong.
So long, it's continuous delivery every 15 minutes.
But
There's a fix forward.
Well, it depends how long it's going to take for the hotfix. If it's going to take hours, then you do a rollback.
Yeah, one of the reasons of the continuous delivery is that
You can roll back.
Feature at a time, that you know what's broken, you take it back, you roll it back. That's the real concept behind it. What you see in companies these days is they're still doing the same volume of delivery for each delivery more frequently. That's missing the point. It's about de-risking it.
And it depends on the product as well. So if it's a banking product,
Yeah.
you don't have the comfort. I mean, you can afford this. Just have to roll
You've
back.
got to roll it back.
I mean, for me,
It's
actually,
like coffee service, a good chance. People will be disappointed 15 minutes.
It's being sold on as continuous delivery, continuous deployment, and fix forward.
There's also rollback quick.
yeah.
That's the key thing. People don't understand that. It is about de-risking. You do smaller features.
Because they're
More
more
frequently.
small features.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would think continuous deployment for me, one of the criteria is that you can roll it back really quickly.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps it continuous, because that means if you imagine you've got your pipeline and you're checking in all the time and deploying all the time, if you leave something broken in production, nobody else can ship anything, and therefore your pipeline is kind of ground to a halt and you're not continuous anymore. So continuous without that rollback is a...
When you say rollback, does that mean you take it off the market?
So deploy the last known good build.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's not always the case. Sometimes it depends
yeah.
how often you deploy. We deploy, for example, I don't know, 15, 20 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like actually we can...
What kind of product do you like there?
Pardon?
What kind of product do you deploy?
I don't understand the question.
What company do you work at? You were giving an example of what you do.
It's just, yeah, regardless of the company, basically.
Oh, right,
Like
you're just
15, 20,
talking-
20
I thought you were
deploys a
talking
day.
about your
Yeah,
experiences.
it's regardless of the company. But if you, for example, like 5 deploys back in the time, we introduce the bug, then we have to like do a rollback only just for this thing, which is actually like another deployment, because we're removing just this like commit that like this much or like this PR, which is like it counts as a rollback as well.
Yeah. And yeah, the kind of not obeying the tester's code, I think, is a one as well, which is the question everything, assume nothing, trust no one, including myself when I'm writing my answers to my tests. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure I tested that. And then a week later, I'm like, I obviously didn't test that. Some things that I think make a difference, although every single one of these is actually just an aid to communication. So bug triage and prioritization, architectural design reviews, so you kind of know what you're going to do, why you're taking that decision. 6 months down the line, it's documented somewhere why you took that decision so that people know why we are where we are. Whatever you want to call, RCA, root cause analysis, post-mortems, cause of error. I think that's kind of like a really critical thing to help everybody learn from, mistakes so that you can move forward, and making sure that those are as blame-free as you can make them is critical. Planning we talked about earlier. OKRs, I'm kind of in the middle of looking at OKRs as objectives and key results, so it's a little bit different from key performance indicators, where you have what you're going to measure, but instead of saying what you're going to measure, you have to start from what your outcome is and work backwards.
Some people rave about that. Why would you not?
So I think if you do it right, it's great. I think it's really, really difficult to do it right. It's like writing a good test case. It's really, really difficult to get your language crisp enough to support what you want to get out of it. And there's lots of examples that I've seen of people kind of doing it slightly randomly. And then, things like actual cross-discipline pairing, so dev and QA, or QA and BA, or QA and UX, or dev and UX. I think that's where Agile kind of really adds a lot of value, that you have those people close together, they know what they're working on well enough that they can kind of really make good strides. What I've learnt, point number 1 is that you cannot test your own code, otherwise I would have spotted the grammar error. People know more than me. That's great. That means that as a group we can come up with something better than you can come up with by yourself. Everybody's human. Everybody has a bad day. They're not out to get you. It's fine. Sometimes those things that you think are all coming together to create a perfect storm of bugs is actually just a coincidence. And I know that I jump into, there's a pattern, this must be connected to that, somebody shipped some code and this broke and therefore they're the same thing. It's worth always taking a step back. It's really good to be in many tribes, so being QA, be part of your Agile crew, be interested in a product, be interested in a technology, because all of that will help kind of increase your sphere of understanding. And then the last two, kind of pretty much any methodology. You asked earlier about waterfall versus agile. If you've got good communication and good discipline, you can call your methodology anything you like and you'll still be able to deliver good software. And if you do that while thinking about what a customer will want, then you deliver good software that people will use. And they've been very dry slides, so there's a picture. Thank you.